So for today's video, guys, I'm very excited to bring you a just under 1 hour conversation between Liam Nissan, Twitter personality Liam Nissan. I'll link his Twitter account if you're not familiar down in the description, and myself. In the beginning of the conversation, his podcast co-producer Jim is chiming in every now and then, but then towards the end of it, it's mostly a conversation between Liam and me. And it's an interesting one. We talk about politics, obviously, from Trump to Marjorie Taylor Greene. We talk about stakes, we talk about Knight Rider, so it's a really diverse and fun conversation to listen to. I hope you enjoy it. Now, before we get into it, I want to let you guys know that Liam is currently launching his own podcast channel. It's going to be called Derp State Radio, and the second it's live, I'm going to link it in the pinned comment right under this video. So please make sure, go down there, check the pinned comment, follow the link, and subscribe to his YouTube channel over there and check out his content. If you enjoy content like this, then please don't forget to also subscribe to this channel, smash the like button, and maybe share your thoughts on the conversation down in the comment section below. For obvious reasons, this recording is audio only, but I hope you enjoy it nonetheless. But without further ado, let's get into the conversation.
I'm doing great. I just kind of woke up, so I'm kind of getting my bearings for the day. What's it look like was trending most last night and this morning? Do you know?
I'm nursing a little bit of a hangover myself and stayed up very late with my brother. That's what we do sometimes. Actually, I had a good conversation about maybe quitting drinking. It was a good conversation.
You got really hammered, and then you were like, I should quit drinking. That happens at times.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like I do this with my brother as well. I've got a brother, and I live in London, so he comes over every now and then, and we drink so much. It's really not good, but
does he live in London too, or does he
come
over from Germany?
He lives in Germany, yeah. So he lives, it's the opposite, because I live in London, obviously, like kind of big city thing, and he lives in the most rural place you can imagine in Germany. So
is he a German cowboy? Is that what he is?
What is a German cowboy?
I don't know, like a rural person.
Oh, like he's herding cattle, you mean, literally?
Yeah. Does he do that, or does he just live in a small town?
He lives in a small town. He's a creative. But they do have loads of cows, and he gets like his hands on the freaking best beef you can imagine, dude. Like they've got cows. They're so healthy. It's insane. They taste so delicious. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Grass-fed beef. My grandpa had a big ranch, and he ended up giving it to my aunt instead of my dad when he died. So we kind of got screwed out of all the money. But they would raise their own beef. Not a lot. They were mostly wheat farmers, but they also had some cows. And what it meant was the freezer was always full of really good beef. So it's a good way to grow up.
It's great, man. I love it. It's a bit of a problem here in London, to be honest. Like the meat quality is freaking garbage. It's horrible.
It's always been that way in London.
That's what we hear in the news.
That's why the FDA was created, because the meat quality was so bad in the big cities.
Yeah. It's not great, but it's fine. You get used to it, and if you can spend a lot of money, you get great meat here. You just have to spend insane amounts of money.
It's that way here too. The best thing to do is, if you know a farmer, just say, hey, I will buy one of your cows, and then we'll butcher it and we'll split the beef, right?
Right, but then you need a giant freezer, right? You need to store that stuff somewhere, which
it's not too bad. You're going to spend a lot less on electricity freezing that beef than you would buying it at the grocery store and restaurants. So
yeah, no, we've done that up here as well in Vermont. And the good thing is that you have a chest freezer, and you actually leave it outside, and it helps with the electricity.
The Ben and Jerry's ice cream does that come from Vermont?
It does. This is where it was created and developed and born. And I've been to the factory.
Good stuff.
They were. It's a whole thing though, because 10 years ago they were purchased by Unilever, so they are owned by the company that makes shampoo,
which is the bad one, right?
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. I think you're thinking of Procter and Gamble, but
they're both bad.
So they've had a lot of.
Did you hear earlier this year? Procter and Gamble created a whole new company out of thin air to sell baby powder. Do you know why?
Because of the talcum lawsuit.
There was a big talcum lawsuit, and they know that a lot of people are going to sue Procter and Gamble, but now they can only sue the little company, not the big total company.
Yeah, you know who else did that?
Who did that?
Blackwater, in a different sector of the economy, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Blackwater. Yeah, was it what's her name? DeVos's husband,
Shelley or whatever. Her brother runs Blackwater.
Yeah, that's a whole episode right there. We won't get into that.
Yeah,
so
that's just as bad. They're just as bad as Prigozhin's. Dude, I read this book about Blackwater, where it talked about Blackwater, and they had huge groups of men over in like Iraq, and they were completely lawless. They could do whatever they wanted. They would take drugs. They would shoot from the balcony of their hotel rooms, just to random houses. These guys were out of fucking control.
And when you want to compare Blackwater to a situation like Elon Musk with SpaceX, Blackwater has managed to, through the rubbing of elbows and to basically provide us with 90% or something of our private security needs in the world. So what happens is that we've become so reliant on them because
Yeah.
we don't have other people. And so now that's this, I believe, that's the situation with SpaceX,
Right.
is that we
I was
put
just gonna
all
say
our
that.
chips. Yeah, yeah. And so there's a similarity there as well.
Yeah, I
You're
agree.
correct. You're correct. Yeah. It's gonna get us into trouble because they think Blackwater can roll over there and do everything with, all, what amounts to diplomatic immunity. Blackwater knows that they're not going to get prosecuted on the American side. If they get captured, they might get prosecuted on the Taliban side, but they operate outside the law.
When they do that, they put our actual troops in harm's way because they have to follow the rules of engagement. They're out there like
Right.
sitting ducks, you know.
Correct.
They're wearing the fatigues. They're flying our flag. Blackwater goes out there and starts raises hell, and the troops are the ones that are out there that are sitting ducks, and they're more visible.
So what else is on the agenda today, boys?
I saw you tweeting about the, let's say, removal of a big adult website in Texas. Let's
All
just
right.
describe it like that, which I
There was more
found.
than one. I went to multiple websites and they were all down.
Are they actually? Because that was my initial thought. I was like, surely they just took one down and people just need to move
Well,
over to
it
plan B.
looks
And
like any website that is based in the US and that operates in Texas is available in Texas via the web, which is all of them. Pornhub, RedTube, they all have messages now. If it's a foreign based porn site, then you can see it just fine.
right. So, but when you say they have messages, it means you can access it, but it says this place is not available in your location or
Well,
something.
one or the other. One of them said you have to jump through a bunch of hoops to prove how old you are, and nobody wants to do that every time they go see porn.
Right.
So the solution is a VPN if you want to watch those porns.
Yeah, I saw that the search inquiries coming from Texas for VPNs is going like up like 90 degrees. It's like a 90-degree
Yeah,
increase, which is
dude.
amazing.
There's like 30 million people in Texas or something like that. That's a lot of people to block from porn. That's like
Dude,
10% of the US population.
people need their porn. You know what I mean? You can't do that.
Some people do. Some people really need it. I don't look at it very often, but I like that it's there.
I mean, here's my theory about this, okay? I really think it creates like almost a sense of balance. Look, I know the porn industry is obviously like a horrible place. And just recently, I think we
Right.
got two cases of very, very young female adult actresses, I believe more or less taking their own lives, right? Now, I don't know
Yes.
what exactly was
It
involved and what
happens a
led to
lot.
that, but it does happen a lot. It is a dirty industry. It's not a healthy place. So
Very.
I'm not saying here
No,
porn great and
no.
all that. But at the same time, I believe in society, it creates some kind of balance. It
Right.
just in its simplest form allows people to let off some fucking steam. You know what
Correct.
I mean? And if you remove that,
And that's how most people treat it. They're like, I don't want to know the names of the actresses. I don't want to get into it. It's not like a whole genre of movies for me.
yeah.
I
You
want to
know,
know who's leaving comments.
Well, I Googled it
Jesus.
earlier and I tweeted this as well. Like Twitter recommended to me, like, do you want to explore these communities? And it was like literal porn communities.
Yes,
Like,
mine was doing that too.
and it's like, holy smokes, dude. The state of
Mine
this
was doing that
platform.
right when I was in bed laying next to my wife, like it was trying to get me into trouble. I'm like, I have never looked at these communities. Don't
Yeah,
suggest
it's
that in front of my wife.
really
Oh,
wild. It's wild
You know
stuff.
what's funny is my wife doesn't even know I'm using Liam Nissan right now.
Oh, she
I
thinks you're off that.
She thinks I'm using a small burner account to read the Twitter instead of using the big one.
To be honest, like my concern there would be like if you have this agreement with your wife, you should kind of honor it. You know what I mean? Like
I
if
have been. My wife knows that I'm trying to set up a podcast, so she knows that that's what I'm doing,
okay,
and
fair enough.
so we're doing that. She doesn't know I have Nissan, though. That's true. It doesn't really matter.
So, but on this porn thing, right? This porn ban thing. What as like obviously someone who lives abroad, how did that come to be? Is that basically like radical Christians who are like, this is very bad, and now we push this law
Correct.
through? Is that what happened?
Correct. Correct. It's a law that says you have to prove your age before you can log on. But proving your age through their website is such a burdensome task that it effectively bans porn. So they're not
do you
banning free speech. They're just making you prove your age. That's how they get around it.
Sorry, the websites had to implement that. The websites are
Correct.
now forced to do this in Texas. Otherwise,
Correct.
they right. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And it's got to be one of the approved methods of verifying your identity. So you have to, it's not only you have to verify your age by answering some questions about the Nixon administration, right? You also have to verify your actual identity. So it's just like And that's something Twitter's been saying. Twitter's been saying no more anonymous accounts. And I'm
Yeah.
like, fuck that. I've got to leave if you can't be anonymous. What's the point in speaking truth to power if you have to tell everybody your address?
That's insane, because Twitter really is a website or a platform that has never been about individual people. You know what I mean? It's more about a platform that expresses the thoughts of people rather than saying, I am this specific person.
Correct. It's been both. I never came to Twitter in the past because I always thought that the business model was narcissism, right? Everybody was
Right.
navel gazing. Everybody was tweeting pictures of their food, just like Instagram, and they were saying what was on their mind, but it was so narcissistic. You're like, I just want people to follow me. You don't have friends, you have followers, right? And I always
Yes.
thought that was different than what Facebook was doing. Facebook was trying to get you in connection with people you really knew in real life. So I thought that it was better because of that for some reason. But now I know that Twitter is just, well, Twitter's better, but Facebook is like an echo chamber, and you only talk to the people that agree with you, that grew up on your street. And I'm like, no, can't do that. They all believe in QAnon now. I got to do something about that.
Also, Facebook
So
really feels like a dying platform at this point, with like a huge increase in the age users, like the
right,
age group of the users. Like, it doesn't feel good anymore. I mean, to be honest, I never was on Facebook. I skipped Facebook completely. Never had an account because I saw it from the beginning and I was like, this is an idiotic idea, dude, from every point of view. I get it from a social point of view. Like, okay, you connect with your old school friends, but to be honest, I don't give a shit about these people anyway.
if you're trying to sell insurance in your hometown, it's a great place to go.
True.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough. That's a good point. But I mean, when did you start even being on Twitter? When did you start going onto Twitter?
It started in July of 2021, and that's because again, my entire hometown started believing in QAnon conspiracy theories. So it's like, I got to do something about this.
Mm.
So the funniest name I could think of was Liam Nissan, and I only did it as a joke. I wanted my followers to think it was funny. I didn't want MAGAs to think I was actually Liam Neeson. That wasn't my goal at all. Frankly, I didn't think anybody would be that stupid.
Yeah.
At first, I just used a picture from the movie of Liam Neeson talking on a cell phone, right? But I didn't have any sunglasses or no doobie. But the day the sunglasses and doobie happened was when the actor Kevin Sorbo thought I was the actual Liam Neeson, and he was like, "Can I ban you from using security in Hollywood?" And I'm like, "What the do whatever you want to try, dipshit." But my point was, I added the sunglasses and doobies so that people like Kevin Sorbo would no longer think I was Liam Neeson. I was like, surely nobody else could look at this picture and think this is the real actor now, because part of it was I didn't want to get banned for impersonation. Right? I made it so ridiculous that nobody in their right mind would mistake me for the actor, but I was very, very wrong.
So it had
You
almost
know,
the opposite effect. It's like,
almost, yeah.
that's wild. Yeah.
I get so many people think I'm the actor, and it's probably because I have so many followers. They're like, only the actor would have
Mm.
300,000 followers, right? But like I said, from the beginning, it was not my plan to fool people. It just happened. And it just so hilariously happened. I've gotten so many followers from those tweets.
But I found it so interesting what you said, that like your original motivation to do this is that all of the people in your hometown started to believe in QAnon, which is something I witness here as well. I mean, QAnon is not as big as where I live in the country, but like a lot of people believe in wild conspiracy theories and just wild misinformation, and it really spreads across any country almost at this point. Even in my own
Yes.
family, I have cases where people in my own family, with like misinformation about vaccines.
Right.
And in the beginning, I tried to have debates with them and be like, look, here's the data. This is the real world. And they're not willing to accept that anymore. They've moved past that. And
Yes,
that is a scary thing. That is a scary thing.
very much so.
So yeah, I share that with you.
What's it like in Vermont, Jim? You got the same problem?
It's two things. Obviously, it's a smaller segment of the population.
Right.
Vermont's very spread out geographically, but also
Vermont's also left leaning compared to a lot of U.S. states. Even though there's a lot of rural areas, there's a lot of cool people up there.
There is, but I think what happened is that the people in the rural areas, they really didn't have a window to the outside world until Fox News really came online in about like 99, 2000. And so that's what they're being fed. And so for a while, it wasn't a problem, right? Because Vermont also has that whole libertarian thing going on. So you had a lot of conservatives up here that were, they like Bush, but they hated the Iraq War. They said we had no business going over there. But I think that everything started to galvanize here, like the rest of the nation, was when Obama became president. Because, Fox is just beating that drum. And there's a lot of
Well, look at here. I ain't
racial
listening to no
bias.
black president.
Well, the thing is that Vermont wants to be liberal and tolerant and all that, but the problem is that Fox had been feeding them this shit. In fact, the liberal state like MSNBC and CNN, they aren't helping.
Nope.
So I was just talking about it last night with somebody when I'll never forget Katrina, and
Right.
you remember that moment when the camera panned all of those people that were standing there that got left behind right, immediately after the storm, and then Wolf Blitzer said, "So poor, so black," and they
Right.
were not helping. And when white people were go and like go to grocery stores that were flooded just to get a loaf of bread
Right.
to feed their family, but when black people did it, they were looting, and that's still a problem today. It doesn't
No
matter
shit. No
what
shit. Double
what bias
standards.
yeah, well, it didn't matter what bias your media outlet was. They're still kind
Right.
of locked in
It's white
that
privilege.
bias.
It's built into the way we communicate, and it's
Absolutely.
something we've got to work on.
But
It's
in
funny
my,
because I have a daughter who's going through a identity crisis. Well, maybe not anymore, but for a couple years there, she likes to dress as a boy, or not even as a boy. She likes to dress as like an emo. I think of her as one of the kids that used to like The Cure. That wear black, just like the kids on South Park that wear black. It's kind of like goth, but she's not into goth music. It's hard to
right.
explain.
I
Yeah.
kind of
But
get
uh,
it. No,
but she wanted to go by they them, because she considered herself non-binary. But me, I watched that girl grow up, and she had all the cutest little toys with the biggest eyeballs, and she just loved cutesy shit. So I was like, you're as girly as they come, right? And I knew that was true. And then she finally got herself a little boyfriend, and he's like completely harmless because he's so small and she could beat him up if she had to. So I'm like not worried about it at all. So we're in this situation where she's finally got a boyfriend and she's being very feminine, is my point. And I knew that would happen, but she had to go through a lot of bullshit to get to that identity, right? But my point is she identifies as a woman now, or at least she doesn't say she does, but she's definitely a girl that likes boys, is what she is.
but I'm
Yeah.
assuming that
And
you gave her the space to work that
yes,
out, right? Yeah,
yes, I gave
that's
her the
that's
space.
huge.
And
That's
my, and
huge.
my whole point was my 4-year-old, if I call her sister or if I call her daughter, he says, he corrects me and tells me to use the proper
Mm,
call her a sibling instead of a sister. And he's only
interesting.
4 years old, so he learned it, right? So the point is, you can teach young children how to communicate without offending everybody, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good skill to have when you're trying to come up through grade school and preschool and all that jazz. Studies show that the child who doesn't piss off the teacher is the one that gets the most attention, right? And if you want your kid to get a lot of attention in public school, he needs to be very polite. You got to teach him how to be polite when he's young. So I guess that's my whole point is the children can be molded to speak in a world where transgender people live without offending them all the time. There's hope for the future.
And they don't
Yeah.
feel like they're subjects of tyranny either.
Correct. It's just a word. If she wants to be called sibling, then let's do it. Right? There's nothing wrong
Right.
with that.
What I'm saying is when somebody
That's what
insists
he.
that
That's
you
what he
use a
thinks.
pronoun, right? When somebody
Right.
insists that you use a pronoun that you would not have normally used, there's that section of society now that feels that that is
Well, it's
tyranny.
it's the same section of society that didn't want to wear their seatbelts when they made that law,
Or stop drinking and
or
driving, or wear the
or stop
vaccine. I mean,
smoking
sorry.
in restaurants. All those
Yeah.
little things that help people.
Mm.
Yeah.
They hate it, right? So
Mm.
they don't want to change to help nobody, especially somebody that makes more money than them.
Yeah, because I guess making compromises for others that don't directly benefit you almost feels like a little bit of loss of control or loss of privilege. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, if you have to make a compromise in your own life for other people's sake, it feels like you just lost a part of your freedom almost, right? Which is bullshit. Of
Correct.
course, it's
It's
nonsense.
bullshit.
But it's
Right.
people perceive it that way, and I think many people are not able to articulate that to themselves. They just like in their gut feeling, they feel like, well, that's wrong. That's not
Right.
right. It comes from an angry place.
And one more point to say is that there's a lot of conservative men out there that are in my exact situation where they had a girl who said she was not a girl and then she became a girl and I knew it was going to happen the whole time. So they think they right. They know they think in their gut that they're right, right? Because oftentimes they are. Oftentimes that child is just dealing with an identity crisis, which a lot of children do. A lot of grown men deal with identity crises. But my point is, when you have a situation like that, and I'm proven right that she was always going to be girly, because she always was girly, then he's like, well, all transgender are that way. He immediately assumes that they're all wrong. And that's the point. They're not all wrong. Some of those people really are, men trapped in a woman's body or vice versa. And you have to adjust for those people. And that's the thing. There's all this confirmation bias that keeps happening in these people's lives. And it makes them even more belligerently fascist.
And that's why I'm
So it's
so
about
happy. Like I was just about to say, like on our Discord server, several of our mods are trans and they are more on my age, right? They are older people. But like speaking to those people, it is so important. And that's why I'm so happy that this topic gets moved more into the center of society. It is so important that we create a platform for them to explore it without prejudice. Like
exactly.
just explore it. You don't want other people to be like to be judged just for the fact that you're exploring it. Whatever comes out on the other end, and then they oversaturate that narrative. They shoot over the top and turn it into, oh, now they're giving 3-year-olds puberty blockers. It's like, this is not a real narrative. This doesn't happen in the real world. You know what I mean?
It doesn't. Correct.
So in their, from this point of fear and lack of understanding, they push these just plain false narratives and harm a lot of people in their identity and in their exploration, and cause a lot of mental health challenges, basically.
And they turn them into scapegoats for all the things that are wrong with your world. At the end of the election cycle, you're ready to kill transgender people because you think they're shooting up all the schools.
Yes, yes. I'm quite happy to see that Trump is not running on this at the moment, that he's not pushing the we have to murder all LGBTQ people and put them in camps kind of narrative.
He's almost there.
I know he's almost there, but he's now like heating up people against migrants. That's his big thing he's doing.
Racism is easier. The transgenderism or bigotry is easier to sell on Facebook to moms who are creeped out by stuff. It's easy to sell disgust. Yeah. So all you got to do is remind people that gay people have anal sex, and a lot of people find anal sex disgusting. So all you have to do is remind them that they have anal sex, and you've done your job.
That's what they say, that they find that disgusting. And that kind of comes to the next point, where so many people who openly advocate against gays existing come out being gay later. They get caught in some fucking gay club, or
I feel for those people.
Me too, me too. Because they are living a lie. Their whole life is a lie. It's wild.
And they hate themselves because of it.
It's a sad thing to witness, and it's
Lindsey Graham is one of them. Lindsey Graham is obviously a gay man. He's never had a wife. He's had male roommates. I'm not kidding. He's what we call them spinsters back in the day, women who never got married. But that's what he is. He's a fabulous woman who Southern belle who never got married.
Another example, I guess, is like Jesse Lee Peterson, right? I don't think the rumors have ever been 100% confirmed, but like people came out and spoke out against him and said, yes, I'm a gay prostitute, basically, and he hired me. Yeah, and he's like the biggest voice against gays till this day. He's still pursuing this. It's like,
I'm not sure who that is.
Man. Jesse Lee Peterson? Sure. No, he's like a black conservative radio host. He's a pastor. Look him up, dude. It's a wild story. That dude.
There's lots of gay priests, and that's another problem. There's lots of closeted gay priests. There's lots of closeted gay reverends, in the Protestant church, and being a unmarried man with a really fine wardrobe to choose from and a camera to speak into every month or every week, there's a lot of flamboyantly gay men that think that job sounds perfect, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the cloth, so to speak, attracts lots of gay men, in my opinion. And it's not right to say that, because then they're like, well, you can't blame all the Catholic Church pedophilia on gay men because you're using them as a scapegoat. And that's right, because I'm sure there's lots of gay men that would never, ever touch a child. But there's lots of ostensibly straight men in the church that do. All what they're doing is perpetuating cycles, because usually they were abused as children themselves.
It almost raises the question of like, to what extent these two things are connected. How many men notice that, let's say, for example, you grow up in a very Catholic and like conservative family, and you grow up And there is no platform to openly admit that you're gay because it's hated in your whole community. But you have these feelings, right? You discover this in yourself and you're like, well, actually, I like the boys more than the girls. But now the answer that everyone tells you is God. You got to go to God. So you double down on God because he will heal your gayness. And now you become a priest, right?
Right.
And
There's
you
gay
end up.
conversion therapy, which is such a crock of shit. There's no
It's
way any of that
unbelievable. Yeah.
works.
Yeah. It's
Right.
wild. Yeah. I mean, another example is Dave Rubin. I'm sure you're familiar with that guy.
I don't think so.
The Rubin Report. He's also a very,
Oh,
very
yes.
big
Rubin Report.
conservative guy. And he is outspokenly gay, right? He not only
Right.
is gay, he has a husband, he's married to a man,
Right.
and they have two surrogate children. But at the same time, his community is predominantly anti-gay because he's preaching right-wing narratives and conservative narratives. So sometimes to see that guy trying to bridge this gap of pleasing his audience, right?
You know,
While at
my wife's favorite politician by far is Pete Buttigieg. You know, and I'm like, if Pete Buttigieg wasn't gay, he'd probably be the vice president right now because he's just so charismatic. But he's going to have to overcome all of the fear of gayness to continue being a rising star in the Democratic Party. But Buttigieg excites me when he speaks. He's just so damn nice and he's just so damn smart. And those two, that combination, you know, I would love Pete Buttigieg to be in charge of lots of things because I'm sure he can handle it and he would do the right thing. You know, and my wife, who's a Republican technically, says she would love Pete Buttigieg to be president. So maybe someday, knock on wood, hope it
that's what I
happens.
mean. I'm not American, so I can't really judge the stigma that still exists when it comes to voting for openly gay
It's
politicians.
still bad. It's still very bad. There's still lots of Christian women who know Pete Buttigieg is a nice guy. They've listened to him, they've talked, they've heard him speak. They know he's a nice guy, but they just couldn't vote for him because of the gay thing and because they're in some, you know, evangelical church that forbids it. There's
Does
so
it?
much politics in our churches, man. We gotta tax these fucking. They're all they are is tax-free political action committees right now.
I agree. I mean, to be honest, like it felt to me like coming from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it felt like we already moved past this whole gay thing. We're like, okay, some people are gay. We're kind of accepting it. But now with Trump coming up with like this whole, you know,
The
this whole,
backlash.
yeah, the backlash, there's like a rhetoric that's been normalized in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
And,
That,
and you were right. You're earlier. You said it all started with the backlash to a black president, right? Oh, you know, Trump was backlash to Obama's presidencies.
yeah.
You know, they not only elected a black man once, they re-elected him. That's how successful he was. Even though his poll numbers were kind of bad during that second election, he still won. You know, we would have been a lot better off if Hillary Clinton had beaten Donald Trump. And but the problem is that Hillary Clinton also had a lot of baggage. You know, they had bad shit on her going back to the 90s with the Whitewater investigations and all the money they got from those shady real estate deals. So there were
Mm.
valid reasons to hate the Clintons. There were, and there still are. You know, I used to be a Republican. I understood the evidence. I understood that there was lots of evidence to suggest that somebody gave Bill Clinton a sweetheart deal on this real estate just to give him a bunch of money. It was a bribe. And Bill Clinton was taking bribes. Bill Clinton was fucking his secretary in the Oval Office. So he was just doing a lot of nasty shit that some God-fearing Republican might even disapprove of. But now they flipped the script. They've got a guy that openly fucks porn stars as their president, and they're not worried about morality anymore. They're worried about power and money, and that's why I am no longer a Republican.
I mean, it's wild how they disarmed that narrative, right? Trump can do anything,
Right,
anything. And he just has to say, yeah, well, it's the deep state and it's a witch hunt. And everyone's, yeah,
right.
that's right. What, you murdered 15 children? Yeah, it must be the deep state, bro. Oh, there are photos and videos and everything of it. Deep state. It's all AI, whatever.
Or AI, right? Yeah.
They will always come up with something to justify it. And that is a level. That's why the cult description that's going around is so accurate because it's literally a cult leader that can do no wrong. No matter what wrong he
Correct.
does, it will not
Well, it is.
ever be.
Well, it is a cult. It's a doomsday cult at this point because I've seen all these people, the weird right wing fringe, talking about how Donald Trump was sent from God, right? And the proof is that he banned abortion, or at least he undid Roe v. Wade. So they're saying only God would have done that, and I'm like, that's not what's going on here, guys.
Hmm.
What's going on here is that Trump works for Russia. Russia put him in charge so he could remove America from NATO so they could reestablish the Soviet Union, because that's always been Vladimir Putin's goal in life, was to reestablish the Soviet Union, because nothing hurt him more personally, deeply, than the dissolution of the Soviet Union back when the Berlin Wall fell.
Yeah.
I'm a little older than you are. You're probably in your 30s, right?
I'm in my 40s, my man.
Oh, okay. So we're the same age. You know, scorpions. When the wall fell, that was a big deal. I remember that summer.
The wind of change. Yeah.
The wind of change, man. That was so, to me, that was inspirational. You know, I thought the world was getting better, the world was getting safer. And I was right, because for a long time, we haven't had any major wars, you know.
But then they put David Hasselhoff up on that wall and he performed in a glittery jacket, and that ruined it all, man.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about David Hasselhoff. I apologize from one nation to another.
Dude, I was a big fan when I was young. When I was 8, 9 years old, Hasselhoff was my hero. Loved Knight Rider, loved Baywatch. Huge fan.
I loved Knight Rider too. I love Knight Rider. On the same line as Knight Rider, I loved Airwolf, because it was an attack helicopter that could talk to you. And I was like, man, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Knight Rider was fun, but Airwolf could fuck some shit up. You know what I'm talking about? So
yeah, no, Knight Rider was like the tame version of it. There were no bullets, rarely, and it was
yeah, he was like MacGyver. He didn't even carry a gun. You know what I mean?
True, exactly. Yeah. No, but what I wanted to say earlier about your point about Hillary Clinton, I agree. We would probably be in a better place, but inevitably, I think we have to admit to ourselves that even if Hillary Clinton would have beaten Trump, it would have just postponed the problem.
Correct.
Because there's also another side, another big aspect to this whole thing. Even I hate, as very few things on this earth, that Trump won this election. It was also a wake-up call for a lot of traditional corporate politicians, if you want to call it that, where they realized, holy shit, there's a huge amount of people out there who do not agree with the principles that we built our idea of politics on, right? Which in you know, if we're all honest, there are many dark sides to it as well. Like you said, Bill Clinton took bribes. I'm sure pretty much every single politician in that kind of world at that level has done some shit that is not in the interest of their country, you know, because money is nice. So because that's a debate that a lot of people put out there. They're like, well, I don't like Trump, but Biden, he's old. And it's like, yeah, dude, nice. You know, I've seen this meme on Twitter with the Handmaid's Tale, you know, where it's like, it's all the women lined up in their Handmaid's Tale dress, and they're like, yeah, I voted for Biden because he was old. I don't know if you're familiar with Handmaid's Tale, with that story.
Yeah, I am.
Right. It paints like this very, very vivid picture of like a crystal fascist version of the US. It's insane.
Correct.
So that's a big point. Like, to be honest, there is no comparison, in my opinion, between Biden and Trump. Even voting for a fucking wet towel on a wall is a better choice than Trump, because Trump is a fascist leader with totalitarian tendencies. Do you know what I mean? This guy wants to run the US like fucking Putin runs Russia, like Xi runs China. That's what he wants. And and I'm convinced if he gets elected this year, that's what he's going to try anything he can to pull that off.
The only way to keep himself out of prison is to become president for life. And that's what his goal is.
Exactly that. So I'm not sure if he gets elected that there will ever be elections in his lifetime again. He will suppress that shit, and he will try whatever he can to suppress that shit. And that is
right.
And to be honest, like, that's where my heritage.
I will lead the battle from down south. That's what I'm ready. I'm prepared for civil war. I don't have any weapons, but I'm prepared for civil war.
It's probably better not to have weapons, you know. Yeah, exactly. Have a plan, be smart about it. But no, I mean, to be honest, there's also an aspect of me being German. I have heard this shit firsthand from my grandparents. It's like,
so did I. My grandpa dropped bombs on the Nazis, and he was captured after his Stratofortress was shot down. And he was in a prison camp, not a concentration camp, mind you, but a prison camp built for soldiers. And he almost starved to death waiting for the war to get one. So the last 6 months of the war, he just sat into his cell and thought about food, because they wouldn't give him any.
Jesus Christ, man.
There was no food to give them. Everybody was starving.
And I look at the US and I feel like this context, right, that we have, I heard this from my grandparents firsthand, how it all started, right? It's not that Hitler started building concentration camps on day one. It started with the economy is in a bad place. We need a big, strong man to get us out of it. Who's at fault? It's the Jews, and you know, now it's the immigrants or whatever. You know, you twist the narrative slightly,
or the LGBT community,
or the Muslims, or whatever it is, right?
All the others,
yeah, or like, and then on top of that, like the things like Hitler suppressing opposing news, right? I mean, that's what Trump is doing with all all the news media is lying. They're all corrupt. Like you're suppressing opposition. It is literally a picture perfect definition of what fascism is, what's currently growing. But nobody seems to notice. And people say, well, Biden is old. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, what's happening here? I did not expect to see this in my lifetime.
If you still think Biden's too old to be president, just watch the last State of the Union address, because he knocked it out of the park. He spoke very well. And then he taunted the fucking Republicans. That was hilarious. But he just did really good on that speech. And I'm like, man, that was impressive. Yeah, maybe they gave him some Ritalin. I don't know, but it worked. Whatever they did, they need to keep doing that, right?
I agree.
So he did great.
I agree. I saw that speech. I was also very impressed. And I was also like, what the hell are they giving him? Like, I want some of that. That sounds like,
what
sounds like a nice cocktail he's getting there.
He's probably taking them pills Joe Rogan's been selling. Focus your mind, man, because he did a great job.
Probably. No, it was a great speech. It gave me hope as well that he might put himself back on the radar.
And then they followed up with that Katie Britt woman who was, she was perfectly lambasted on Saturday Night Live by Scarlett Johansson, by the way.
I saw that too.
It was perfect. That was so funny. Like, it was made for SNL. A crazy Sarah Palin with a acting degree. It's like, or bad acting degree. She seems like she's like some reject from Hollywood, right? Like, she's like a B actor that couldn't quite make it because every time they asked her to cry, she went crazy instead. But whoa, I can't believe they did that, because even a bunch of Republicans were like, that was just embarrassing. You know what I mean?
That's true. I saw that speech as well, the original one. It was almost like a parody. It was
like a parody of itself. So weird.
Right? Yeah. It's wild. And that's another thing, like whether it's Trump and all these right-wing clown conservatives like Marjorie Taylor Greene and stuff. These people, they're not, I don't understand how anyone can take them serious. It's literally like a parody. It's almost beyond parody. You can't make a parody of it because it already goes too far. I don't know if this is just my European point of view on this stuff, but I look at it and I'm like, holy smokes.
It's beyond parody.
Yeah, it's wild.
Beyond parody. Yeah.
Yeah. So this
when
Katie
something
Britt
is
speech
so
was...
ridiculous. No, go ahead, make your point. But you're right. It's something that's so crazy that you couldn't possibly parody it any more than it already parodied itself. Right?
Yeah. And this Katie Britt speech, I mean, it was on top of that, like, it was so cringy. The way how she tried to amplify these points, and then she started telling lies, right? She started to talk about, I spoke to this. This was the one. I'm not mixing this up. She spoke about this. I spoke to this migrant at the border, and she told me. And then it turns out like it happened 15 years ago, and she's an activist, and it was completely irrelevant to Joe Biden. It has literally nothing to do with him.
Right. It's fucked up. They keep catapulting these weird people from obscurity to very prominent positions, like, for example, Mike Johnson. He was like the junior congressman from Louisiana. Nobody knew who he was. Look how much power he has right now. He's obviously a closeted gay man. You can tell by his haircut.
100%,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Right. So, and he used to make money on gay conversion therapy. He had that live-in teenage black son, or quote unquote adopted son, back in the 90s or something. The guy's a weirdo. What I'm saying, but nobody knew who he was. So he was unvetted. And now he's third in line to the presidency. If something happened at an event where Biden was with Kamala and they both got hurt, he'd be president and nobody knows who the fuck he is. That's crazy.
That is crazy. I agree. Yeah. But I think you're absolutely right. The point that the Republicans keep catapulting these weird people that nobody knows about, in like out of obscurity, into like a big stage.
It's the Russians, dude.
You reckon?
Yeah, dude. They're all Russian agents. Lauren Boebert, everybody who was recruited on exploretalent.com, that was a Russian front. That's where Lauren Boebert came from. That's where Scott Pressler came from. That's where a lot of these weirdos came from. And then they got Marjorie Taylor Greene because she was a gun rights conspiracy theorist. She was marching around on the street following these school shooting victims down in Florida at Stoneman Douglas High School. She was following those guys around saying that they worked for the Chinese government or something. She was just totally fucking nuts. And that's who these people were. They were located, they were recruited, and I think they worked for the Russians. And that's why Marjorie Taylor Greene was the pipe bomber. I believe that's true. It's easy to see that she was involved with the conspiracy because she asked for a pardon even though she was only sworn in a few days before anything went down, right?
Right. Yeah. I think you
They're
know more than
chaos
I do here.
agents.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. With the chaos agents, I agree. I did look at the so-called evidence around her being the pipe bomber. I don't know, man. I went over it in a live stream in quite a lot of detail. It looks like it. I agree with you, but it just doesn't make sense. Like, would a congresswoman do that? I don't know, man. Maybe
I
you're
think
right.
they did. If
Fair
you look
enough.
at the stride, I'm just looking at like it's just like a voice. If you look at the way somebody walks and you look at two videos of them walking, you can tell by their gait if it's the same person or not. And they have computer programs that are even better at it than my eyeballs, I'll tell you that much. So you can identify people by their gait. And if they have a sample, they can match you to somebody else. The computer can do it. It maps out where your bones are at and it maps out how you move your bones. And the way you move your bones is as individual as your fingerprint.
Fair enough. I looked at the stride as well. There are great comparison videos who literally put it next to each other, and it does look
Yeah,
very similar. But at
it's
the
her,
same
dude.
time, I would say, like, if that would be a
She's even wearing the
scientifically
same shoes.
I
They
know,
got
I saw
pictures.
this. Yeah, I saw this.
Right.
But the thing is, like, if there would be, let's just say, scientific basis for that to really say this could be considered evidence, then surely there would be some kind of prosecution going against her about this,
Oh
right?
yes, there's
But
there's prosecutions cooking for a lot of people. I know that for a fact. I think there will be one of those mornings where a bunch of people gets rounded up, and it happens with organized crime. It happens with child protection services. Sometimes the FBI wakes up and they arrest 60 people in the same day, and they did it all. They coordinated the arrests behind the scenes. Nobody got alerted to it, and they just do it all that way nobody can run. They don't want people to run, right? So they've done it before, they'll do it again, and I'm pretty sure it's going to happen to a lot of people that were involved in the fake elector scheme,
hmm.
because there was hundreds of Republican jackass, local state senators that were like totally on board with that bullshit. They need trials and they need prison.
Okay, no, I agree with that, and it's probably true. I mean, you're making big predictions right now. It's
Right,
possible.
right.
It's
I
certainly
think it's going to
possible.
happen. There's enough evidence for it, is all I'm saying. I don't know if we have the balls to do it. Either way, I'm going to resist these fucking fascists. If they get back into power, I'm going to go even deeper underground.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, you probably have to because like people like you are such prominent voices in this fight against these people that like if Trump gets reelected, you are on lists, bro. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I'm on lots of lists. I'm sure that I've got
Mm.
connections on the inside.
Good. So I don't need to worry about you.
I'm also I chat with one of my favorite Twitter guys is Malcolm Nance, and we send DMs back and forth. So I've got connections to good people.
Okay, good. One thing I wanted to kind of chime in or kind of come around to, I think you spoke earlier about is like this, kind of where we all started and where you spoke about like loads of people in your village kind of go on the QAnon train, and it's the same here in England. It's the same in Germany. People start believing in anti-vax theories and like educated people, right? It's not
Right,
just that they're all
right,
like
right.
educationally challenged. They are literally smart people often. So I kind of wanted to come around on that and like, I don't know, break that down in a little bit more detail because you guys briefly spoke about Fox News, you spoke about CNN, and obviously news media does play a big role. But
Another big factor in what radicalized my own mother, for example, was Rush Limbaugh. Huge radio show, the biggest radio show in American history. That was one of them. And that's the same thing that happened to the Nazis in America in the 30s. There was a big, prominent radio show. Rachel Maddow was talking about it. So radio is a huge factor. These people, they don't like to chime in. They just want to listen, and they listen all day long.
fair enough, but that point, whether it's CNN or Fox or Rush Limbaugh and these kind of radio shows, or even like Joe Rogan, you can kind of put him into that pot as well to an extent.
Joe Rogan idolizes Art Bell, so he's trying to do the same thing Art Bell was doing. He wants to do a show where every fifth show is about aliens, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
kind of what Art Bell was doing. He wants all the conspiracy theorists, but Art Bell idolized Rush Limbaugh. He's like, if I could have the reach of Rush Limbaugh, and I was on during the day, this would be a whole different show. The point it was listenership, and all these little plaques that they have on their walls for how many radio affiliates that they have.
I did not know that he idolized Rush Limbaugh because I'm quite a big Art Bell fan. I love the guy. I'm deep into the whole UFO thing. So
No, I loved it too. I listened to all of it, but that's the point. That's what Joe Rogan's trying to do, and he's even stated it. So,
But I mean, he intentionally does not invite prominent, intelligent, left-leaning voices on his podcast anymore because he knows they're going to challenge the shit out of him, and there's nothing left of him once he's done with them.
Correct. He knows his audience, and he's playing to his audience now.
100%. But my point is, like, all this shit only works, whether it's Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, Joe Rogan, all these people, it only works if the education is at a certain level. If you have a certain lack of education in the general population, then that shit works. So I have this theory, right? I want to run this by you. I want to hear your thoughts on this theory. Why I think so many people that are even highly educated struggle with this radicalization. And that is, I feel a lot of people nowadays, whether they're smart or not, they struggle with how fast technology and information technology evolves around us. They struggle because humans adapt very slowly. If you look how evolution works, it's a slow process. But like technology now, like kind of pivoting at the moment with AI and all that.
It's as if we all learned a secret language that the old folks couldn't learn because they were too old to learn it.
Exactly. But at the same time, the old folks can't say, you know what? All this information stuff, it's too much for me. I can't really understand anymore what's going on around me, because that would be like admitting weakness, right? So you're admitting that you don't understand the world anymore. So you can't really do that. So instead, they try to hide that and they run with it. And that's why they fall for so much misinformation, because they don't know how to read information anymore.
It's belligerent rage. Is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Belligerence.
So I think that explains it to me, that we're living in times where everything moves at a pace and a lot of people just can't cope with it, but they can't admit that they can't cope with it. And then they struggle to understand right from wrong and true from false. And that leads to so many people just believing lies and falling for complete nonsense, you know?
Right. There's wedge issues. They know that the majority of Trump voters are pro-abortion rights because they just are.
Yeah.
So they have to dance around that issue quite delicately, because there's a lot of people that only support Trump because of his stance on abortion. Everything else about him, they detest. They detest his marriages. They detest his gaudiness. They detest that he cusses. They detest everything about him. But since he did the abortion shit, he has the loosest coalition of weirdos ever assembled, is what Trump has.
So what do you think? Is he going to win this year? What's your feeling? Like, besides your personal preference, obviously.
I think he has no chance of winning. I think they see that in the poll numbers. And I think the problem, well, mainly because Biden did orchestrate the best comeback for an economy of any westernized nation.
Yeah.
So he did that. So, you know, all those Biden stickers they put on the pumps that show, oh, I did that, Biden, you know, but it's funny. It backfired now because the price is so low. Those stickers only remind people that they can afford gas again. So that's good.
Yeah.
So my point is, lots of good things have happened. Lots of wheels got greased. The efficiency of the ports is now like 3 times as efficient as it used to be. So we're getting goods off of ships and into Walmart faster than ever before. We're probably never going to run out of toilet paper again. Biden's like, fuck that noise, fixed it. So my point is, they don't have a lot to run on. And what I actually think is going to happen is they're going to orchestrate a terrorist attack, try to make it look like it was Hamas, maybe derail a train somewhere. Who knows what they're going to do? They're going to try to use fear to push people to vote for Daddy Trump, the strongman. So that's what I think is going to happen.
That's an interesting theory. That's an interesting theory, because that would really give them the leadway. That now they have an argument, because you're right. At the moment, he's running quite poorly on migration. And then even Biden comes out and he offers like a really good deal on migration on the border.
Exactly.
That is even embraced by the border.
It was written by Republicans.
Yeah, exactly. So there is really no argument against it. But Trump obviously doesn't buy into it, because like it doesn't play into his narrative. He has nothing left if he goes for that. So yeah, I mean, that terror theory is, Jesus, it's a good theory.
Right. So I think that's what's going to happen. It would probably be a bombing of some type or a train derailment. I think that big train derailment we dealt with during the Biden administration, there was a couple of them, but they spilled chemicals near a town. Everybody had to evacuate. It was pretty bad. Remember? So,
I remember, yeah. And people still reference this today regularly. You get people in 2023, I think it happened, right?
Right, something like that. So the point is, it could be as mundane as that, or it could be something where they try to take a building down. Who freaking knows? But they're going to try to make it look like Muslims did it.
Yeah, it's quite possible.
Yeah, they'd say, look at what Biden did to the border. Now we got all these Muslims coming in from the southern border trying to kill us. And then they'll get more votes and it'll work. And, you know, imagine what they could do with a a few drones during the eclipse. They could creep people out.
Yeah, because at this point, like I said, with the media, with the lack of education in large layers of society, with the technology moving and like so much information bombarding people, you just have so much more leadway with stories like that. You know, if you implement oh, look, the migrants now derailed this train narrative, which is obviously nonsense, you do get away with it in 2024. You know, people are like so gullible. It's a huge problem. But yeah, anyway, I want to do like one more thing I wanted to throw out there. Have you been following the Don Lemon thing?
Not closely, but I know that he did a critical interview of Elon, and then Elon fired him the next day. And we haven't seen the interview yet. So,
oh well, we've seen parts of it.
What have you seen?
So there's mainly this famous clip where Lemon basically asks Elon and says, so you know, a lot of people are mentioning like anti-Semitic and other worrying tendencies on your platform. Do you feel that there might be needed a little bit more content monitoring needed on your platform, right?
Yeah.
And then Elon replied something, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't know the exact words, but he said something like, "Well, this is a question I don't have to answer." And it's like,
wow.
what do you mean you don't have to answer? This is your platform. Like, if anyone has to answer this platform, then you know, why is he not answering that question?
Especially because he puts himself in the middle of all of it on the platform. You know, he's making decisions.
Yes.
He's the moderator. He's the moderator for the biggest. The guy can't buy friends. Guess what I found? I found some old recordings of a place called the Breakfast Club. There's a woman named Lala from Oklahoma that has this. She often does a late night Twitter space. And guess who used to drop by? A guy named Adrian Dittmann.
Oh, I heard of him.
They all knew it was him. So basically, Lala sent me something from April 15, 2023. It was a year ago, right? And Elon's in there. And they all know it, right? They were trying to be nice to him. They were dropping in on their little conversations with like 8 people. It was Elon Musk, and they knew it was him because it sounded just like him. Anyways, I put a recording in our signal if you want to listen to it and splice it for your next podcast. Your theories were correct. Now I'm just filling you in on what else has happened. So, hey guys, I'm gonna skedaddle. I gotta feed myself because I need some breakfast.
I'm in this space. I mean, anytime you want me to be part of any of this, let me know. I'm cool for it. I'm down for it. Cool.
All right. Well, cool,
Good
guys.
time.
This was a great use of my time, and I appreciate your time. And thanks for making the Zoom meeting possible, Jim.
Yeah, anytime. And thanks for coming. It's a pleasure to have you. And Liam,